The moment she looked at me and said, "Come lie down with me and see if it holds," I forgot how to breathe. Not because I misunderstood her words, but because I knew exactly how lonely she had been, and I knew how lonely I had become. The strange thing was, neither of us had planned for that moment. It began with a broken bed frame, a toolbox, and two people who had spent years pretending they didn't need anyone. My name is Daniel, and for the past 8 months, I had lived alone in a small apartment at the end of a quiet hallway. After losing my job and going through a painful breakup, I had slowly withdrawn from everyone around me. I went to work at a local hardware store, came home, ate whatever was easiest to prepare, and spent most evenings sitting near my window with the television playing in the background just to make the apartment feel less empty. I had learned how to live without expecting anyone to knock on my door. Then one rainy Saturday morning, someone actually did. It was Emma, my neighbor from across the hall. I had seen her many times but barely knew her. She was probably in her early 30s, always polite, always carrying grocery bags, and almost always wearing the same tired expression that made me wonder if she ever truly slept. She stood outside my door holding a small paper with a number written on it. She apologized for bothering me and asked if I knew anything about repairing furniture. I almost laughed because I knew a lot about repairing things. It was one of the few skills I had left that still made me feel useful. She explained that one side of her bed frame had collapsed during the night. She had barely caught herself before falling onto the floor, and because she had an important work meeting the next morning, she needed it fixed quickly. I grabbed my toolbox and followed her across the hall. Her apartment was modest but strangely beautiful. There were books stacked beside the couch, photographs hanging on the walls, and small plants near every window. Yet beneath all those little signs of life, there was something I couldn't explain. The place felt lonely. I knelt beside the bed and examined the broken wooden support. One of the screws had completely stripped the wood, while another section had cracked under pressure. I told her it wasn't serious and that I could reinforce it. She smiled with relief and sat on the edge of the mattress while I worked. As I tightened the first bracket, she began telling me how embarrassed she was that she had called me. She said she didn't know many people in the building. I told her there was nothing embarrassing about asking for help. She became quiet for a moment. Then she admitted that she had become used to doing everything alone. Those words stayed with me because I understood them too well. If stories about kindness, second chances, and unexpected connections mean something to you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need a little hope today, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Sometimes a simple story reminds us that the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of a second chance. I finished repairing the frame after nearly an hour. I added 2 metal brackets, replaced several screws, reinforced the cracked wood, and tested the structure with my hands. It felt solid. Emma looked impressed and thanked me repeatedly. Then she suddenly smiled in a way I hadn't seen before and said that there was only one way to know for certain whether the repair would hold. Before I could ask what she meant, she looked at the bed and said, "Come lie down with me and see if it holds." For a second, the room became completely silent. I stared at her, unsure whether she was joking. She noticed my expression and laughed softly, explaining that she meant both of us should sit on the bed at the same time and test the repair. I felt embarrassed by my own assumption, and she laughed even harder. We sat on the edge together. Nothing happened. The frame held. But neither of us moved. We remained there for several seconds, staring at the floor. Then Emma quietly said something that changed the entire meaning of that moment. She told me she hadn't invited me to test the bed because she was worried about the repair. She had asked because she was tired of eating dinner alone. I looked at her, and for the first time, I saw beyond the confident woman who always carried her groceries by herself. I saw someone who had been quietly struggling. She told me her father had passed away the previous year, and a few months later, her fiancé had left after admitting that he had fallen in love with someone else. She had moved into the building hoping for a fresh start, but instead, every evening became a reminder of what she had lost. I told her about my own breakup, my job loss, and the months I had spent convincing myself that being alone was easier than being disappointed again. For the first time in months, I talked honestly with another person. That evening, we ordered inexpensive pizza and ate it sitting on the repaired bed. We laughed about ridiculous things, talked about our childhoods, and discovered that we both hated crowded restaurants. When I finally returned to my apartment, the hallway seemed different. The next morning, there was a cup of coffee waiting outside my door. No note. Just coffee. I smiled. From that day forward, something slowly changed between us. We didn't rush into romance. We didn't make promises. We simply became neighbors who checked on each other. Sometimes Emma would leave soup outside my door when I worked late. Sometimes I would fix something in her apartment before she even had to ask. We started taking evening walks around the neighborhood, sharing stories that neither of us had told anyone else. Months passed. Then one afternoon, I received a phone call that changed my life. The hardware store offered me a management position. It wasn't a fortune, but it was stability. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward. That night, I knocked on Emma's door. She opened it holding 2 cups of tea and smiled as if she already knew I had good news. I told her about the job. She hugged me before I could say anything else. It was a simple hug, but I felt something inside me break open, not sadness, but the walls I had built around myself. Later that evening, we sat on her balcony beneath the soft city lights. She reminded me of the broken bed frame and how a simple repair had somehow changed both our lives. I told her that maybe the bed had never really been the thing that needed fixing. She looked at me quietly and said maybe neither of us had been broken. Maybe we had simply been waiting for someone to remind us that we were still worth showing up for. That sentence stayed with me. A year later, the bed frame was still standing. So was Emma. So was I. And somewhere between a toolbox, a cup of coffee, shared dinners, and countless quiet conversations, 2 lonely people had found something neither had been searching for. Not perfection. Not rescue. Just companionship. Sometimes life doesn't send us a dramatic miracle. Sometimes it sends us a neighbor who knocks on the door because something is broken. Sometimes the person who asks for help is secretly giving us the chance to heal too. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes they are alone, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness for more stories about hope, kindness, and second chances. And before you leave, I have one special request. Comment "Everyone deserves a second chance" if you believe a small act of kindness can change someone's life. Because sometimes, the thing we think we're repairing isn't a bed, a house, or even another person. Sometimes, we're simply repairing our faith that tomorrow can still be better than yesterday.